So in this video, we're going to cover something called Berties Box. Now, the reason we're going to do this video is thinking about our behaviour and how it can affect other people's behaviour. Often people will say to me, I can't control what they do. No, you can't control what somebody else does. You can only control your own actions, your words, your behaviours. But that can then have an influence on somebody else, be it positive or negative influence. But our own actions, our behaviours, our attitudes can have a knock-on effect to the other person. So that's really what we're going to be looking at today. Another thing that people commonly say to me is, why should I change? I'm not the one that has the problem. Those sort of things. Why has it got to come from me? I'm not doing anything wrong. Nobody is saying that you're doing anything right or wrong. But if you want somebody else to change for the better, it might mean that we have to start doing something a wee bit different ourselves, at least giving it a go, at least trying to make some change. And that could then bring about change from the other person. So change can then incite change. Because as we say, we can't control what somebody else does, but we can control what we do. So we're going to look through something called the Berties Box. The Berties Box basically describes a cycle or sort of a box-looking shape of how behaviours and attitudes can continue in a helpful or unhelpful way. And we'll look at ways that we could perhaps change our behaviour. So the Berties Box looks something like this. So the Berties Box is broken down into 4 parts, where the first part we'll start off with the top. So the YB, this is your behaviour. As you can see, your behaviour has a knock-on effect to the other person's behaviour, their behaviour. Their behaviour in turn affects your attitude. Your attitude then affects their attitude, and their attitude affects your behaviour. So a really simple example that I use to describe here is if you're living with somebody in the household and you are doing all of the cleaning in the house, for example. So you might do all of the cleaning, all the pots, all the laundry. So your behaviour is to do all of the household chores. How does that then affect the other person's behaviour? Well, they're probably not going to do any of the household chores because you're doing it all for them. They've got no reason to do any cleaning because the housework is getting done. But then that can affect your attitude. So their behaviour of not doing anything affects your attitude. Your attitude is you might be feel you're hard done to. You might be quite resentful that you're doing all of this work and it's not getting appreciated, or people are pulling their weight. So your attitude could be something of quite maybe sort of a bit hostile towards somebody else. You might not be in the best mood. So your attitude of being quite frustrated is going to rub off onto the other person's attitude as well. And they're probably going to be wondering, what on earth's the matter? Why are they in a mood? Why are they being funny? Why are they being off with me? Why are they frustrated? And they don't know. So they start to withdraw because they think, well, actually, you're being unpleasant and I don't know why. So they start to withdraw. And then that sort of starts to ingrain that behaviour as well. I'm the only one that does anything. Therefore, if they're not going to do it, I have to do it. So it falls back to me. So we can easily fall into an unhelpful pattern of behaviour here. And if we don't start to change things, it's not really going to change the other person either. Because as I say, they're probably quite unaware of what the issue is. What we can do differently here then is by changing our behaviour. This is where we can start to influence this box or this cycle to start to look a wee bit different and to start to look a bit more healthier and a bit more balanced, if anything, so that it isn't yourself that is doing all the household chores, for example. I know it's a very, very simple example, but it gets the point across, doesn't it? Let's keep it simple. Sticking with that example, so your behaviour initially was to do all of the household chores. You were doing everything within the house. We could relate that back to, you might feel that you're doing everything for your loved one. You're ferrying them to work. You're making sure that they're going to appointments. you're doing everything for them, okay? So, but going back to that example of the household chores, what your behaviour change here could be is to say, you know what, actually, I need to get a bit of a balance here because I'm doing all the housework. It's actually leaving me frustrated, but I need somebody to help me out with this. Your behaviour is to ask the other person within the household, be that your partner, your child, your friend, your siblings, and asking them, could we share out the responsibilities, or could I ask that you could do the pots on an evening? It's asking that other person, what do you need from them? So using your communication, being open with them and honest, asking them, being assertive. This is not about telling them what they have to do in an aggressive way or like a parent might. It's asking, could you help me out with this? Could we share these responsibilities? This is going to really help me out a lot, and I'd really appreciate it if you could do X, Y, and Z within the house. Now, you might get a moan and a groan from them at the beginning from their behaviour because they've probably been quite comfortable. They've probably been quite used to not doing anything. So it's kind of pushing them outside their comfort zone, but you've got to do that. You've got to ask for what you need. But what you will start to see is that that person might moan and groan at first. They might not like that change, but they'll start to do it. And then once they start to help around the house, that has a knock-on effect to your attitude because you're seeing that change in their behaviour where they're helping out, where there's more of a balance in that relationship. It affects your attitude. You start to feel a bit more respected, appreciated. You start to feel warmer towards the other person as well. So your attitude affects their attitude because you're being more positive, you're grateful. It's broken that negative cycle that was happening before where you weren't really speaking to that person. They didn't really understand why. So there was that tension there. So your attitude is going to affect theirs because yours is a more positive attitude. They are going to feel more positive in themselves. They are going to be more willing to repeat this behaviour because they've received some positive feedback from you. So you start to progress into a more positive pattern of behaviour, of communication within your relationship. Now, as I say, it's quite a simple example relating it back to household chores, but you can relate this to yourself with your relationship to your loved one. As I've briefly mentioned, do you tend to find that you are doing a lot for your loved one and you start to feel that resentment that they're not doing anything for themselves? Well, they're not going to do anything for themselves if you keep doing it for them. They're not going to get that sense of achievement. They're not going to feel empowered, but you're going to be feeling resentful because you're giving all of that and you're not getting anything back. So there is an imbalance there. So try and think about almost like a seesaw in your mind and trying to create that balance between you and that other person within that relationship. There might be some times within relationships where some person gives more than the other, but that should tend to balance out again. You know, if, for example, you're in a relationship and it's with your partner and you're feeling pretty under the weather, well, your partner might help out a bit more with the children because you're under the weather. But that's not always the case. There's that balance there, okay? So the importance here is thinking about your behaviour. What might your behaviour actually be and how might it be contributing to this cycle continuing to go round? And sometimes it's hard to admit that actually I might be playing a role within this that isn't helping. But that's sometimes the first step, isn't it? Is acknowledging, it's that having that awareness of what I'm doing and having that acknowledgement and thinking, right, what can I do differently here? Going back to what I said at the beginning, you can only control your own words, your own actions, your behaviours. So if you do make some changes yourself and you think, actually, I'm not seeing any changes in that other person, but think about how does it make you feel that actually you've made some changes, you've been able to take control, you've taken ownership, you've taken steps to do something about this, okay? If that other person's behaviour doesn't change, that's on them. That's their responsibility, for them to take ownership, not for you to take ownership of. So some of the key things I've kind of talked about here are looking at your behaviour and how that could be influencing the other person's behaviour, how it could be maintaining the same patterns of behaviour, routine, communication. Another example I tend to hear is I'm always sort of treading on eggshells. I'm worried about saying something. And there can be valid reasons for that, don't get me wrong. But communication is also mega important here to try and shift that pattern within the relationship. So having open and honest communication, asking for whatever your needs might be. So be assertive within that, looking at what your needs are, respecting the needs of others, of course, but vocalizing what your needs are within that relationship too. And you might just start to see those wee changes start to bring out some subtle changes within the other person. This all takes practice, it takes time. Some changes you might see happen overnight, others might take a wee bit more time, but practice all the time with it. So I hope you find that helpful, and keep rewatching this video. As I say, keep practicing this, because it is about being aware of your own behaviours, how that influences somebody else. Thanks for watching.